I think we're at one of those moral convulsion moments that happens about every 60 years. From the 1770s, we had one, the 1830s, Andrew Jackson, the 1890s, progressive era, 1960s. The whole culture just suddenly shifts. You get a moment where you get a lot of indignation. People are disgusted with the state of society. And I think we're at one of those inflection points where we either decide to be a diverse society or not. We either decide to be an equal society or not. And so these elemental questions are on the table. If you look at society in the 1950s, we had a lot of problems. We had racism, we had sexism, we had a lot of anti-Semitism, but we did have a lot of cohesion. We had very low income inequality. We had very low political polarization. We had a lot of people really active in their communities, a lot of people with a stable emotional basis. And over the last 50 years, we've had a culture of me, a culture of I want to be free to be myself. And that's been great. And we've made a lot of progress, especially on race and gender and other issues. But we've torn apart the connections between people. And so now you have more loneliness, more distrust, more isolation, more suicide rates, a third more depression. And so people, when you make them feel lonely and alienated, they're going to do what their evolutionary roots tell them to do. They're going to revert to tribe, and they've reverted to political tribes. And now we don't really see issues. We just say, what army am I part of?
Our basic sense of belonging has now translated into our political ideology and identity. And why is that so damaging for our society?
Because it's asking more of politics than politics can bear. Politics at its best is a competition between partial truths. Republicans believe in freedom, Democrats believe in equality, and we need to somehow find balance between those two things. And it's about policies. It's about designing a healthcare system that'll actually work for people. But we've turned it into our ethnicity. My ethnicity is being a Republican or a Democrat. It's not being Polish American or Italian American or somebody from Dallas or a member of this church. It's politics. And when you turn politics into your ethnicity, then any compromise is dishonor. You're dishonoring your ethnicity. And so when you ask so much of politics, you turn politics into this war of all against all, where there's no compromise. And then it's not really that satisfying. If you devote yourself to your community and your faith and your family, these are actually emotionally satisfying things. Politics,
the things that are bringing us together are the things that we hate, not the things that we love.
Yeah, and it's important to make the distinction between tribalism and community. And community is mutual love of a thing. Tribalism is mutual hate of another. And so it feels at first like community, but it's more like an addiction than an actual relationship.
What can be done about this loneliness and isolation that has prompted people to take these sides or join these armies?
It would help if we weren't being ripped apart on a day-to-day basis from the top of our society. So that answer is political. But to me, this kind of isolation and loneliness can only be helped by at local level, at relationships, and by forming groups and getting active in groups, active in community organizations, active in neighborhood organizations. I became a member of an extended group about 6 years ago, 40 kids from DC who were like 20, and about 8 of us who are older. And we had dinner every Thursday night for 5 years. And we really got in each other's business, and we learned to trust one another, and we became sort of a chosen family, a forged family. And that's how I found community. And I think everybody tries to find something like that.
Do you think that the pandemic in some ways has added fuel to this partisan fire because people don't have enough to do and enough places to go and enough activities to participate in? It's increased the polarization.
Yeah, I've super felt that we underestimate the emotional toll this has taken on us. Like just the pleasure of going to a club and watching music. A lot of pleasures have suddenly denied us. And then we're stuck looking at each other, the Twitter version of each other, not the real version of each other. And so you've seen this shocking rise in depression. There was a poll out about the middle of this year where they asked people, young adults, have you contemplated suicide in the last 30 days? And like a third had. And so we're just living at a time of tremendous just emotional stress. And it's showing up in all sorts of ways, especially in politics.
In the New York Times, it was pretty much an unprecedented collection by all the columnists at the Times in the Sunday paper, yourself included, about, and I think the title is What We Have Lost or What We've Lost. And you talk about the floor of decency in your column. Explain what you mean by that.
And my view is that most, at least modern presidents or politicians, they understood there are certain standards of behavior you don't sink below. And you may not like George Bush or Barack Obama, but they tried to be decent and civil and not be, talk about their hand size. And to me, the crucial moment I write about in that column was the second Republican debate, which was all the way back in 2015, the primaries. And Donald Trump had gone after Carly Fiorina for the way she looks. And then he turned to Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, and he said, I'm not going to make fun of your looks, but I got a lot to work with there. And right now, that doesn't seem so shocking. Like Trump has done way worse. But at the moment, I was like, what is going on here that we have a presidential candidate who makes fun of people's looks? And it got worse. But once you fall through the floor, there's no bottom. And as a society, we're trying to find a bottom.
Well, I thought it was interesting. You write that people didn't seem to be morally repulsed by this, and there was no rise up against this kind of behavior. Why do you think that that became acceptable and even praised in some quarters, that kind of language, that kind of derision?
I think first, we've gotten used to we watch enough reality TV, we get used to a certain level of crassness. Second, people have such low expectations of their politicians that they don't expect anything. And third, a lot of people feel the elites of society are trying to control their thought and speech with political correctness codes. And if somebody's going to break through those codes, they're like, yeah, I'm for that. And so I'd say those three things are the main drivers.
There are two sides in polarization. How do we bring them together, and what could each side do better?
We have a way to do this. It's called contact theory. You just bring people into contact with each other. And I got the 2016 election way wrong. And so I spent the next 4 years up until COVID going to about 35 or 40 states a year, just really traveling and being with other people. Would call it going to a bar. I call it reporting. And I learned so much. I learned that people who voted for Trump, they're not all racists. There's a lot of complicated reasons people voted for that guy and still vote for that guy. I would say that two things that each side can do. First, the supporters of Trump can insist on honesty. We just got to have rules of honesty. Second, those of us in the more college educated class, we have to persist in our efforts to get to know those people. 4 years ago, we all read J.D. Vance's book and thought, I'm going to try to get to know them. And then we sort of stopped. And we often condescend, and I'll say this, as a media person, like you, obviously, of the mainstream media organizations, of the 5,000 people in them, how many of them are Trump supporters? Very, very few. And if you tell 40% of the country your voice isn't worth hearing, well, they're going to react badly. And so we need to do a better job of integration and contact. But hopefully, if Trump loses, we can have Trumpism without Trump. That the ideas that he could have created an administration out of how to help rural America, how to help industrial America. We can have people who champion those ideas without the norm-breaking behavior of Donald Trump.
Do you think if elected, Joe Biden will champion those ideas and reach out to those communities? Because it seems that they feel, and I think legitimately, that they're not being heard or valued.
I think he fits in naturally and has a natural rapport with people in working class communities that even Barack Obama did not have. And so I think he's well fit for this moment. If he focuses an agenda that addresses deindustrialization, all the places that are hurt because mills closed, then you particularly hit two communities, and you hit them at the same time with the same program, African Americans and rural whites. And to have a program that unites those two groups and helps them would be, I think, a great thing for this country.
I also think if he could focus on retraining, we've heard a lot about the transition from fossil fuels to, green energy.
Or at least getting us out of the model where you have to go to college to have a good job. Like community college or apprenticeship programs are just a more effective way to give people the skills they need to succeed.
You cite a survey that says In 1997, 64% of Americans had a good or great deal of trust in the wisdom of their fellow Americans. Today, it's only a third.
Right.
What happened?
People took a look at each other's voting behaviors and they said, oh, those people are not only wrong, they're crazy or they're evil. And so they lost faith in each other. To me, the scariest statistic is trust in each other. 2 generations ago, if you ask people, are your neighbors trustworthy? 60% say yes. Now it's only 33%, and only 19% of millennial and Gen Z. The younger you go, the more distrusting people are because they've been betrayed by experience. And so when a church loses faith in God, the church collapses. When a nation loses faith in each other, the nation collapses. And somehow restoring trust in each other is like the elemental task. Joe Biden can win, but if we don't trust in our society, if we can't work together, we're still in deep trouble. The other thing that I think has been worrying is the idea that we can't really communicate with each other. I can never really understand your experience, and you can never really understand mine. When I was on this trip to understand the world and Trump voters, I really became convinced the interview, it's such a blessing in our profession. The interview is what helps us make contact with each other and learn about each other. And if we don't do that, and a lot of people don't, then you just don't know.
Let's talk about wokeness, because I like this quote. You say it's partly about fighting oppression, but it's also become a status symbol. It's showing people that you are so intellectually evolved that you can use words like intersectionality, decolonizing, and cultural appropriation. Political correctness is not just a means for the less privileged to set standards of behavior. It is sometimes the way people with cultural power push others around. How can the left listen to the silent majority rather than patronize them? How do we find a national discourse?
Wokeness is a movement that emerged out of the universities, and it comes thick with university jargon. It comes thick with the belief that all words are power, and that you can't have a conversation. I'm just asserting my power with my words, and therefore my words need to be controlled. And that to me is wrong. Words are not power. Words are mutual explorations to find, ways to live together and be friends. And so the impulse to censor words and use the power of your cultural position to silence others is not only in the universities and not only in the media, it's widespread. There was a study, 62% of Americans say they're afraid to state their political opinions for fear that other people will shout them down. That's a lot of people. That's the majority of Americans who are afraid to be honest.
But don't you think the right wing is just as guilty? I mean, I don't see many people going on Fox feeling comfortable expressing a different point of view.
Oh no, there's super right-wing wokeness just as well. There, people get canceled on the right for not totally being with Donald Trump, for having some opinion, or for being for gay marriage. I mean, there's wherever these days there's wokeness, or whether there's political extremism, there's intolerance of difference. And I do think there's wokeness on the right just as much as on the left.
I also am concerned that people can have a nuanced position, that they can't support Black Lives Matter and want to get to the root of systemic racism, but also appreciate what good police officers do, and yet also see the need for police reform. It seems to me you have to pick one side or the other when, all things may be true.
Yeah, and I've admired Joe Biden for this, for saying, yes, we have systemic racism, but America is still a very lovely country. Yes, we want to, Black Lives Matter, but we also need some law and order.
Your colleague Maureen Dowd wrote in the New York Times, it's exhausting to be this outraged all the time. And in fact, you also wrote, David, permanent indignation is not a healthy emotional state. How can we change that when anger seems to be the default position and has been for quite some time?
Yeah, well, I mean, if Biden wins, he's just less outrageous than Donald Trump, whatever you think of his views. And what really struck me is, remember that a couple of weeks ago, they both had town halls at the same time.
Yes.
And you knew going in that Biden's was going to be more boring than Trump's, and indeed it was, but more people watched Biden's than watched Trump's. And that said to me that people are ready for a little boredom, a little normal political discussion. And I do think, if Biden wins, we won't have to think about the presidency all the time. And B, frankly, for a lot of us, it's easy clickbait to just outrage about Trump all the time. And maybe politics will be less central and we can go, I prefer writing about culture than I do to politics, but I can't do that now because people only read one subject, which is politics. So I'd love to be able to go back and write about cultural stuff and moral stuff and emotional stuff. But and I think we would all blood pressure would just go down.
David, how can Trump supporters and Biden supporters learn to respect one another?
At the Weave Project, we go around the country. We land in a little town, McCook, Nebraska, Wilkes, North Carolina, and we say, who's trusted here? And immediately we find 75 people who are just love their town and they want to serve it, and they do. And what we at Weave do is we try to lift them up, maybe give them some resources, connect them with each other, make them more powerful figures in our society so we can all sort of copy them a little.